Welcome to Kcse English. In today's episode, we start in earnest our discussion of Blossoms of the Savannah by Henry Olekulit. In our first episode, we prepared a documentary on the issues that emerge in our society, from which the author draws the raw material that he uses to build this novel. We pointed out a number of issues, including the fact that we have rampant cases of female genital mutilation. We also noted the detrimental nature of patriarchy in our society. Apart from that, we also noted the dangers of materialism in our society, and generally the negative and positive aspects of our culture. We also noted in that documentary that we have issues to do with modernity versus traditional values. And to add on that, we also noted that there are cases of betrayal in our society and cases revolving around women oppression and violence. All these issues affect our society, and literature, as we noted, is a reflection of society. We want to see how Olekulit brings out these issues in this creative piece. With me to discuss this book is Madam Brenda Midika. Welcome to this episode.
Thank you, Asante.
Madam Brenda Midika is a well-known teacher and well-versed in the teaching and setting of Kcse examinations. I want to kick off our discussion by outlining just a few of the issues that you may want to pick up and discuss with our audience. We had already noted the issue of female genital mutilation, which is a serious problem in our society. And therefore, I think it is good for us to start from that point, where you shed light on how that particular issue is brought out in this book.
Thank you so much. Henry drives the narrative by using the issue of female genital mutilation to bring out her character's struggle, the character's struggle with FGM. First of all, we see Resian and Tayo, very strong characters and strong advocates against FGM. They are against this practice that does not go well with the girls. Again, Tayo at the beginning says that she cannot accept such a practice on her over her dead body, and it is through this resilience that she has put up that she is able to run away from this practice. On the other hand, yes, Tayo is very adamant that she's not going to go through this, and they are very sure that they want to join Emma Kerere, the woman Monique, who is against FGM and who is actually rescuing girls from the practice of FGM. First of all, we are looking at how Olekulit brings out this issue. We see that who are the major perpetrators of FGM? You see, They are the women, because these women are the ones who actually insist on the practice of FGM. You see, even when Mama Milanoi goes to the village and the women are there and they are talking, she is afraid of the voices there. What are these women talking about? Are they talking about my daughters who are not circumcised? You remember? So the women are the chief perpetrators. Even the Enkamuratani, the woman who actually does the circumcision, she is also a woman. So again, the women are the major perpetrators in this act. Secondly, we are looking at how these women oppress fellow women who are against the cultural practice. Monique does not receive any support from the women in her community. In fact, they push her away. Again, I would maybe ask, do you feel that the men are playing any role against this practice, or they're the ones also contributing to this practice?
Thank you very much. You know, as you talked about the issues, I remembered a situation where I met the author of this book. In fact, he is the one who gave me this particular copy of mine and autographed it. And we had a long discussion with him in Nakuru. And that was about 5 years ago. And what came out is that in order to eradicate female genital mutilation, we must have male champions and women champions.
Okay.
Without collaboration of the two, it is not possible, because we will be pulling in different directions. Again, I think, going back to what you said about FGM, I think it is important to also inform our students and teachers that medically, it does not serve any purpose. It only mutilates and destroys children, and specifically girls. The second thing that it has come out in our discussion with the medical practitioners is that once one goes through female genital mutilation, that particular girl finds it a problem, especially in childbearing. And many doctors have talked about this. There are many other psychological and physical problems that come about due to female genital mutilation. But one thing you mentioned, which will then take me to the question you asked me, why are women the ones who are championing this? Now, patriarchy works in a very strange way. It makes the victim accept that what is being done to her is right. So women have come to internalize that it is normal, it is right. And the society has actually given that impression, and they have bought into it, that after all, this is something that all of us should go through. In fact, they talk about it in terms of cleansing. They want to cleanse a girl. They don't talk about it as mutilation. They want to cleanse a girl. And there are so many taboos and so many ideas rotating around that. And they say, if we don't do this, this will happen. If we don't do this, this will happen. We should tell our people that for sure, female genital mutilation is outlawed by the Kenyan law. But going back now to the question you asked me, are men playing, the rightful role in eradicating this? I want to say, from the evidence here, the men are not playing that role well, because we need more male champions in order to actually change the perception that is there. But having looked at this, I think we may also need to look at other cultural practices that are negative. I want to just start by looking at the whole idea of marrying off small children,
Yes, yes.
where you even give away a child before the child is born. Where a small child, a small girl of 8 years, 10 years is actually sold off like that. And therefore, maybe you may need to pick up from there and focus on some of these negative cultural practices, especially related to the girl child, from the novel's perspective, in order to open up the text for the student.
Thank you again. You have just mentioned the issue of early marriage, which is also forced marriage for young girls. Again, we are also looking at the issue of, is it polygamy? You see, the practice of polygamy. You can see that is it Olekailo's brother, Simiren, has actually 4 wives, and the author describes to us the 4 houses. As Reziane is looking through, she can see 4 households standing there, and she sees that in as much as these women come together to welcome there is this kind of emptiness that she can sense there. You see, these women are submissive to the first wife, you see, because she is the one who distributes whatever little that Simiren is bringing. She is the one who watches over the household. And so some of them as young as is it Yeyo Kitty, the young one there, who apparently went to school with Minik, and so she is married there. She seems like there's something that she is looking for. Again, in polygamy, the issue is that, is it really fulfilling to the women, or it is fulfilling to the male gender? That is one question our students should be asking, and even picking out instances of polygamy in their societies. Are these women extremely happy because they are married as second and third wives, or do they still feel that there is something that is missing in there? Maybe you can talk about another negative cultural practice.
I had already pointed out the issue of marrying of small girls,
Yes.
which I think is very detrimental.
Yes.
And the other important issue that we need to point out, which is a negative cultural trait, is the idea of refusing to take the girl child to school.
Thank you.
Now, that is detrimental because, as we pointed out in our earlier discussion, the moment you decide to look down upon half of your population, then you can't grow. But after talking about the negative cultural practices, I think it may be important for us now to look at our culture and see if there are some positive aspects about that culture. What we are saying here is that there are certain negative aspects of our culture which we actually need to discard. But there are other positive aspects of our culture that we need to actually uphold.
Yes, Professor, as you are saying, because sometimes when my students are reading this text, they tend to really be negative about this culture. But I was telling them, look at something positive about this culture: the spirit of communality, the spirit of living together, the spirit of sharing. You see, even as the Olekailo family comes in, the Simiren entire household comes in there. They are happy, they are celebrating, they are hugging them, welcoming them to the community. We are also looking at Olekailo's homecoming party, where all the village members are welcome. They are celebrating. They are happy that their son is back. You see, the joy that the community is experiencing, and they are happy to see it together. The spirit of communality, which is currently missing in this society lately. Now, another thing I'm also looking at, which is a positive cultural practice, is the role that some young men are fighting in this community. We can look at this young man who is now telling Tayo that he is going to join them in fighting against this oppressive practice of female genital mutilation. And so even as he fights, as he goes on, we see that he ends up losing his life because he is going, Joseph Pamwat is going to save Tayo from the practice of FGM, and he ends up being killed. And so again, what is positive is that young men, very few, but they are coming out, that they are saying that we are not going to accept negative practices from our community. Professor, anything you have to add on these
I think
positive cultures?
you brought out a number of issues that are very important. When I see that ceremony, welcoming, a brother who has been away, that communality is so impressive.
Yes.
When you see the kind of dances, the songs, they are really fulfilling in a way. And so we have certain cultural practices that are so important. Look at hospitality, our African hospitality. You see, we are ready to give, we are ready to accommodate, and that is a culture that we shouldn't be doing away with. And I see this in Blossoms of the Savannah, when we have this ceremony and people are coming together and people are sharing, telling stories, and simply knowing about one another and so on. And that is very important for us. Perhaps before we conclude our episode today, perhaps it is important to just end on a note where we are looking at maybe briefly about the conflict between modernity versus African cultural practices. In a few words.
Yes. We first of all look at the issue of education. Education brings in a whole different set of values, you see. So it carries the modern aspect in it. And so once...
You mean modern education?
Modern education,
formal
yes.
education.
Yeah, formal education there, whereby children have to go to school. They are taught different value sets, and then they also come in the community and they interact with different value sets there. And so we see there's a conflict between the modern versus the tradition. Look at the character Rezian. She has gone to school. She actually aspires to go to university, and she's not settling for anything shorter than going to the university. And so when she comes around and she sees the way these women are living, you see, she is very open and saying, I will not be subjected to a man's treatment in this community, you see, because she's a bit enlightened, and so she's not going to take in anything that she feels that is against the values that have been imparted on her through the modern education. But look at the traditional values that these young women are taught. We look at the character Simiren's last wife, Yeyo Kitty. Yes, she has gone to school a bit, but she has been brought up in a traditional society where she has to learn to be submissive, humble, and a woman of very few words. You only do what is done there. And so when Rezian looks at Yeyo Kitty's life and looks at what she is going through, she believes that there is something that is lacking in these women. Yes, the traditional values of submissiveness and humility are what is against the modern values that women are empowered through in school. And that's another question that my students really fight with. Does it mean that modern education should make us maybe rebellious, maybe? Or
modern education should actually make us liberated.
Yes, exactly.
Modern education should liberate. And the mere fact that your students are asking tough questions about certain practices, then there is some learning going on. Because once they are liberated and they can look at these things rather from a very liberal position, then we know that we are actually changing society to the better. Because I do not think it is necessary for us to go on looking down upon, women and girls in this society anymore.
Yes.
And that is why our students, therefore, as we conclude this episode, should look at the examples in this text. The examples that show some of the issues that we have looked at. Looking at, for example, the positive aspects of culture, the negative aspects of culture, the whole idea of modernity. And when we see people who are fighting, traditional, practices that are negative, they should actually single them out.
Yes, yeah.
They are sort of heroes of sorts in this text. On that note, we come to the end of today's episode, in which we looked at the themes in Blossoms of the Savannah. With me is Madam Brenda Midika, who will join us again in our discussion of Blossoms of the Savannah. On behalf of my crew, Neka and Pambi, I would like to invite you to like, share, comment, and subscribe to this channel so that you receive updates on the educative programs that we are continuing to develop. I am Igara Kabaji.